All right, so you're getting ready for a freight inspector interview. You want to knock it out of the park, right? We've got some great resources from RoleCatcher to help us out there. Career guide interview tips. They even have info on AI that helps you personalize your answers. It's pretty cool stuff.
And what's really interesting is that the role of a freight inspector is way more important than most people think. It's not just checking things off a list, it's about being a key part of the whole global supply chain.
Okay, let's break that down a bit. What does a typical day look like for a freight inspector? The RoleCatcher guide mentions warehouses, ports, even border crossings.
Yeah. You could be checking labels on pallets in a warehouse one day, and then the next you're at a busy port inspecting shipping containers.
So definitely not your typical 9 to 5 desk job then.
Nope, not at all. It can be pretty demanding physically with long hours sometimes, and you might be out in all kinds of weather. But that variety and knowing you're playing a critical role in keeping things safe and following regulations, that's what draws a lot of people to this kind of work.
And that actually leads perfectly into what we really want to focus on today, those interview questions. RoleCatcher's Guide has a bunch of them, and they start with a pretty basic one. What motivated you to pursue a career in freight inspection? Seems simple, but I bet there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, for sure. It's easy to just say the pay is good or it's a stable job, and those are definitely factors. But interviewers want to hear something deeper. What really excites you about this job? Is it the problem-solving aspect, the fact that you need to be super detail-oriented when you're inspecting goods?
Maybe it's knowing you're playing a part in global trade, making sure things run smoothly and safely, or even working with new technologies. I know RoleCatcher mentioned things like RFID tracking and automated inspection systems. Those are becoming more and more common.
Yeah, those are great points. Highlighting those kinds of things shows you've really thought about why this career is a good fit for you and not just any job you're applying for.
Right? It shows you're actually interested. And RoleCatcher's AI can even look at specific job descriptions and suggest ways to tailor your answers for different roles. So if a company is really emphasizing tech skills, you can weave that into your answer about what motivates you.
Exactly. That kind of personalization can make you stand out. It shows you've done your homework. Now let's look at another common question. What experience do you have in freight inspection? What if you're just starting out?
That's where those transferable skills come in, right? RoleCatcher really emphasized things like attention to detail, critical thinking, and a good work ethic.
Exactly. Think back to previous jobs, even if they weren't directly related to freight inspection. Did you have to follow strict procedures, meticulously document your work? Those kinds of things show that you have the qualities that are essential for a freight inspector.
So even if you've never actually inspected a shipping container before, you can still demonstrate that you've got the foundation to learn quickly and be successful in this role.
Absolutely. And it's always good to mention that you're eager to learn from experienced inspectors. That willingness to learn and grow is a huge plus. Speaking of growth, RoleCatcher's Career Guide outlined a few potential career paths. Starting out internships or entry-level logistics positions are great to get your foot in the door.
And this is where it gets really interesting. They mentioned moving up to supervisor roles, specializing in things like hazardous materials, even transitioning to logistics management. So you could start by inspecting cargo and end up overseeing entire supply chains.
That's right. There's a lot of room to grow in this field, and specializing is definitely an option. As you gain experience, the possibilities are there. And mentioning that during your interview shows you're thinking long term. It's not just about getting the job, it's about building a career.
Back to the interview questions. RoleCatcher's Guide has one that asks, what do you think are the most important qualities for a freight inspector to possess? This feels like a real chance to show that you understand the role.
It is. You want to go beyond the obvious, like attention to detail. Think about things like integrity, because you're responsible for making sure everything's compliant and safe. Communication skills are huge too. You'll be talking with clients, suppliers, even government agencies.
So it's not just about knowing the rules, it's about being able to explain them clearly and handle those sometimes tricky situations.
Exactly. And don't just list qualities, give examples. Maybe tell a quick story from a previous job where your attention to detail prevented a costly mistake. Real-life examples always make a bigger impact.
And that's another place where RoleCatcher's AI can come in handy, right? It analyzes what you've said and gives suggestions on how to make it stronger, more specific, and tailored to what the company is looking for. It's kind of like having your own personal interview coach helping you get ready.
Exactly. It can help you find those keywords and skills that are most important to the hiring manager, and then you can work those into your answers naturally.
Okay, let's look at another question. How do you ensure that you are up to date with industry regulations and standards? Sounds pretty simple, But I'm guessing there's more to it than just saying, I read the regulations.
Definitely. Interviewers want to see that you're proactive about staying informed. Mention specific resources that you use, industry publications, professional associations, online forums, things like that.
And it's probably a good idea to mention specific regulations that are relevant to the job or the company you're interviewing with. Like if they specialize in hazardous materials, mentioning that you're familiar with DOT regulations would be smart.
You got it. That shows you've done your research and that you're thinking critically about what the job actually entails.
Now, here's one that caught my eye. How do you approach inspecting a shipment that has been flagged for potential issues? This one feels like you need a combination of knowledge, critical thinking, and maybe even a little bit of intuition.
It's all about being systematic. You don't want to just jump in randomly. First, you have to understand what the potential issue is. Is it missing paperwork? Damaged packaging? Is there any evidence of tampering? Once you've figured that out, then you can adjust how you do your inspection.
So it's almost like being a detective following the clues to get to the bottom of things.
Exactly. And being able to explain that process to the interviewer shows you can think critically and handle those stressful situations.
I'm betting RoleCatcher's AI could help with this kind of question too. Maybe by suggesting some common issues you might run into, or helping you structure your response in a clear and concise way.
Right. It's all about practicing those thought processes and having a plan for how you would approach these situations. Even if you haven't faced a specific issue before, being able to walk the interviewer through your thought process is key.
Okay, this next question from RoleCatcher's list might be a little uncomfortable. How do you handle conflicts or disputes with clients or suppliers?
This one is all about demonstrating that you can handle tough interpersonal situations while staying professional and composed. Remember, as a freight inspector, you're often the one making sure everything follows the rules. So you might get some pushback from clients or suppliers who aren't happy about delays or extra inspections.
So it's not just about knowing the regulations, it's about being able to enforce them in a way that doesn't cause more problems.
That's the key. When you answer this question, focus on active listening, trying to understand the other person's point of view, and finding a solution that works for everyone while still sticking to those regulations. If you can give a real-life example of a time you successfully resolved a similar conflict, that's perfect.
I bet RoleCatcher's AI can help with this too. Maybe with suggestions on how to improve your tone and make sure you sound diplomatic and focused on finding a solution.
Exactly. You want to come across as someone who can handle those tough conversations and maintain those important relationships.
All right, moving on to another question that's all about efficiency. How do you prioritize your workload when dealing with multiple shipments?
Time management is huge in this job, especially when you've got multiple inspections deadlines and potential issues to juggle. Talk about your system for prioritizing things. Maybe you use a task management app, color code your calendar, or have a method for figuring out how urgent each shipment is.
So it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart and having a system to stay organized.
Right. And don't be shy about mentioning the tools and techniques you use. It shows you're proactive and efficient.
Here's another one from RoleCatcher. How do you ensure that your inspections are conducted in compliance with relevant regulations and standards? Seems pretty straightforward, but
It might seem repetitive, but it's a chance to really dive into your dedication to compliance. Don't just say, I know the regulations. Go deeper. Talk about specific steps you take. Maybe you use a super detailed checklist, a system for documenting everything, or a process for double-checking your work.
you could even talk about times when you went above and beyond to make sure things were done right, even if it meant delaying a shipment or having a difficult conversation. It shows that doing things by the book is a priority for you, even when it's not easy.
Definitely. And again, RoleCatcher's AI can look over your answer and suggest ways to make your language stronger, so you sound like you're a real advocate for doing things the right way.
Okay, last question for this part of our deep dive. This one's a bit more about leadership. How do you approach training and mentoring new or junior inspectors?
This is your chance to show that you can share your knowledge and help your colleagues. Even if you haven't formally trained anyone, highlight your willingness to mentor, answer questions, share tips, things like that.
So it's about showing that you're a team player and you want to see others succeed.
Exactly. And remember, RoleCatcher's AI can help you with your wording here. Make sure you sound supportive and encouraging. You want to come across as someone who's passionate about sharing what they know and helping others grow. Now, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, let's take a step back and think about the bigger picture.
This is good to me.
RoleCatcher's Career Guide really emphasized this idea that freight inspection isn't just a job, it's a vital link in the whole global supply chain. When you think about it, the smooth flow of goods, International trade, even just consumer confidence, all of that relies on the work that freight inspectors do.
It's true. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff, but when you zoom out and see that bigger picture, it's actually pretty inspiring.
It is. And that sense of purpose can be a huge motivator, especially when you're dealing with the challenges that come with this line of work. Speaking of challenges, let's get back to those interview questions. RoleCatcher had one about staying motivated. How do you stay motivated and engaged in your work as a freight inspector?
That's got to be a tough one for some people because it's so personal.
Yeah.
It's tempting to just say, I enjoy the work or I like a challenge. But that feels kind of generic.
Yeah, exactly. This is your chance to show your passion. What specifically excites you about freight inspection? Is it knowing that you're making global trade possible? Maybe it's the thrill of finding a problem before it turns into a disaster.
Maybe it's that feeling of pride knowing you're keeping things safe and compliant. Or maybe it's the constant learning and problem solving that keeps you going.
Whatever it is, be specific and be genuine. Share a story or an example that really illustrates your passion. That's what's going to make your answer memorable and authentic.
And I'm sure RoleCatcher's AI can give you some feedback on this too, right? Help you make it more personal and engaging so you really get that enthusiasm across to the interviewer.
For sure. Remember, it's not always just what you say, but how you say it. Confidence and passion go a long way in an interview. Okay, we've covered a lot on those interview questions, but before we move on, I want to go back to something RoleCatcher mentioned in their career guide about staying up to date on industry trends and regulations.
Yeah, that's super important. The world of freight inspection is constantly changing new technologies, new rules, new challenges all the time. Showing that you're aware of those trends and you're trying to learn more, it shows you're serious about growing professionally.
It does. So how can someone stay on top of all that? RoleCatcher mentioned industry publications, professional associations, even online forums.
Those are all great resources. Attending industry conferences or workshops is another good way to meet other professionals and learn about what's new. And don't forget about online learning. There are tons of courses and webinars out there that can help you stay ahead of the game.
And this is where RoleCatcher's AI can really help you. It can look at your skills and experience and then suggest specific courses, certifications, even job openings that fit your goals and match the latest trends.
It's like having your own personal career advisor who's always looking out for new opportunities for you. Let's switch gears for a minute and talk about something we haven't touched on yet, the role of technology in freight inspection. RoleCatcher's career guide talked about how advancements in technology are changing the industry.
Absolutely. We're seeing things like automated inspection systems, RFID tracking, even blockchain technology being used to streamline processes, make things more efficient, and improve security.
It sounds like the future of freight inspection is going to be pretty high-tech. So what does that mean for someone who's just starting out in this field?
It means being comfortable with technology is more important than ever. You don't need to be a programmer, but you should be okay with computers, software, and different digital tools.
So basic computer skills are a must, but being able to adapt to new tech and learn quickly, those are going to be the keys to success.
You got it. And when you're getting ready for an interview, it's a good idea to look into the specific technologies that the company uses. Mentioning that you're familiar with those systems or that you're willing to learn new ones shows that you're adaptable and ready for those changes.
Okay, let's go back to those interview questions for a sec.
Yeah.
RoleCatcher had one that fits in with this tech talk. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the freight inspection industry in the coming years?
That's a great question, and it gives you a chance to show you're not just thinking about today, but about the future of the industry. One obvious challenge is keeping up with all the new technology. As automation and AI become more common, freight inspectors are going to need to update their skills and knowledge to stay relevant.
So it's important to highlight that you're willing to embrace those changes and keep learning new things.
Definitely. Another challenge is just how complex global supply chains are getting. With more complicated trade routes and stricter rules, freight inspectors need to be able to handle those complexities and make sure everything's compliant.
So talking about your ability to think critically, solve problems, and adapt to a changing world, that's all really valuable.
And don't forget about cybersecurity. With all the data that's being collected and shared online, protecting that information is becoming super important in this industry.
That's a really good point. Mentioning that you understand cybersecurity and that data security is a priority for you, that's going to stand out to interviewers, especially if they work with sensitive cargo or information.
Exactly. Answering this question well is all about showing that you're thinking ahead and that you're ready to take on the challenges of the future. And don't forget, RoleCatcher's AI can give you feedback on your answer, make sure you're hitting the key points, and that you're communicating your ideas clearly. Okay, we've talked about technology industry trends, even some of the challenges facing the field. But let's bring it back to the individual for a minute. RoleCatcher's Career Guide talked a lot about personal qualities. What are some of the traits that are essential for success as a freight inspector?
Well, attention to detail is obviously huge. You're dealing with complicated paperwork regulations and cargo, so being able to spot problems is key. But it's more than just that. You need good communication skills, too.
Right, because you're always interacting with different people, clients, suppliers, customs officials, your own colleagues.
Exactly. Being able to communicate clearly and professionally, both verbally and in writing, it's essential for building relationships, resolving conflicts, and making sure everyone's on the same page.
It all ties back to what we were talking about earlier with handling conflicts diplomatically.
And let's not forget about integrity. As a freight inspector, you're the one making sure everything is done right. That means being honest, ethical, and following the rules, even when it's tempting to cut corners.
Absolutely. That commitment to doing the right thing should definitely come across in your interview. Okay, we've covered personal quality, skills, industry trends, the future of the field, but let's get practical for a second. RoleCatcher's Career Guide had a section on getting ready for the interview itself. What are some tips for making a good first impression?
Well, first of all, dress professionally.
Yeah.
Even if the job itself is more casual, dressing up for the interview shows respect and that you're taking it seriously. Do your research on the company beforehand, understand their values, how they operate, and their place in the industry.
Exactly. And make sure your answers show that research. If they specialize in a certain type of cargo or work in a specific region, highlight your knowledge of those things. It shows you've done your homework.
And don't be afraid to ask questions. It
Yeah.
shows you're interested and engaged.
Absolutely. And this is another place where RoleCatcher's AI can be really helpful. It gives you insights into company profiles, industry trends, even salary benchmarks. You can use that information to ask better questions and show that you've really prepared.
It's all about showing that you're not just looking for any job, you're looking for the right job and you're willing to put in the effort. Okay, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about what a freight inspector does, the skills and qualities you need to succeed, the importance of staying current on industry trends, and even some tips for nailing that interview. But before we wrap things up, I want to bring back something we touched on earlier, the different career paths you can take in this field.
That's a good point. Being a freight inspector isn't a dead end. There's a lot of room for growth and advancement. As you get more experience and build your expertise, you can move into supervisory roles, specialize in things like hazardous materials, or even go into logistics management.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So even if you start out inspecting cargo, you could end up overseeing entire supply chains. That really highlights the importance of continuous learning and professional development.
Absolutely. RoleCatcher really stressed that in their guide, recommending that slate inspectors stay up to date, pursue certifications, and maybe even go back to school.
It shows that you're not just okay with where you are. You're always trying to learn and grow. And speaking of learning and growing, RoleCatcher's AI can be a big help here. It can point you towards relevant courses, certifications, even job openings that match your goals and what's happening in the industry.
It's like having a personal career counselor who can help you navigate the world of logistics and transportation. As you think about your career path, it's important to figure out what really motivates you. What parts of freight inspection do you find the most interesting? What are your strengths? What kind of impact do you want to have? Answering those questions can help you figure out a path that's both fulfilling and successful.
And there's no single right answer.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. The key is to be proactive, look for opportunities, and never stop learning.
Exactly. And even if the specific interview doesn't work out, the things you've learned getting ready for it, those skills and insights, they'll be helpful for any job you go for.
That's so true. Every interview is a chance to get better at it and build your confidence.
Right.
I think we've covered pretty much everything you need to know to really ace that freight inspector interview. We talked about what the job's all about, those tricky interview questions, and even touched on career paths and industry trends.
Yeah, we've given you a lot to think about. And with RoleCatcher's AI tools to help you personalize your answers and practice how you deliver them, you'll be in great shape to make a good impression.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to something from RoleCatcher's Career Guide. They said that a freight inspector isn't just checking boxes. They're protecting the whole supply chain, making sure consumers are safe, and even helping global trade run smoothly.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? It's about recognizing that this job, even though it's often behind the scenes, it has a big impact on a lot of people.
It's about knowing that what you do matters, that you're part of something bigger. And that sense of purpose, that's what makes a career really fulfilling.
Exactly. So when you walk into that interview room, remember that you're not just showing off your skills and experience, you're representing a whole profession that's crucial to how our world works.
That's all for our deep dive into the world of freight inspection. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even a little inspiring.
And no matter where your career takes, you always stay curious, be ready to adapt, and never stop learning.
Thanks for joining us on